on the front line tonight. Let me start with Mr. Nicholas Opio. He's a human rights lawyer. Very nice to have you, Nick.
Well, thank you very much, Charles, for having me. I think this is my third time appearing on this program. It's always an honor and a privilege to share this program with distinguished elderly state woman, and the Honorable Matembe, and the admirable Chira Municipality MP, the Honorable Semuju, and of course you, Charles, and those who listen.
Thank you very much. Very nice to have you. Nick is the leader at Chapter 4. We have Dr. Miriam Matembe. Introduction, senior citizen. That's where it stops. Dr. Matembe. Should I say more?
Citizen, child of God.
Child of God.
You forget that one. And of course, promoter and defender of human rights.
Very nice to have you.
Yes, I'm glad to be here this evening. Thank you, listeners, for coming.
The Honorable Ibrahim Semujunganda is a frontliner. He is Member of Parliament for Kira Municipality. He is the Shadow Minister for Finance and a promoter of PFF. Very nice to have you.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening to viewers and those who are following on other platforms.
And we are being joined on the front line by the Minister for ICT and National Guidance, Dr. Chris Baryomunsi, who's also NRM Vice Chairperson, National Vice Chairperson, Western Uganda, and Member of Parliament for Chinchizi East Constituency. Doctor, very nice to have you.
Thank you very much. Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Thank you very much, Charles. Good evening, fellow panelists. Good evening, viewers. I am happy to be here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's start with you. Let me start with Nicholas as a lawyer in practice to deal with a few technical issues. A matter that is already before court. Dr. Kizza Besigye has been charged before the General Court Martial at Machindi. From a legal perspective, discussing these issues, but also navigating the sub judice role. What are the limits? What are the no-go areas?
No, I subscribe to the school of thought that the sub judice rule is not a rule against the whole world. Sub judice rule must be interpreted and applied as to the parties before the court. It cannot estoppel the entire universe from discussing a matter before the court. It would be absurd to think that simply because a matter is in court, the general public who have interest in that matter cannot discuss it. And so, in dealing with those matters, I'm only restrained if I am a party or associated to the case before the court, or if I am a lawyer representing one of the parties in the case. So I think it is perfectly okay to discuss all the details of the matters that have transpired before the court, to interrogate the evidence, to discuss it, to test its veracity, and to challenge it where we think we can. Until that court issues a specific order against this media house and those of us here, we are not bound by the sub judice rule. So I think we are at liberty to discuss it. This is a matter of national importance. It's a matter of the rule of law. It is a matter of the liberties of individuals, and has wider ramifications or impact on all of us.
Thank you. Matters before court are matters. Courts do not operate in closed-off spaces. They are open courts. Members of the public are allowed to attend, and as people might have observed yesterday, there was an attempt to block entry into the courtroom at Makinde, but then members of the public were finally allowed to sit in and listen. So the issues for discussion are issues in the public domain, and they should indeed be discussed. Let me come to you, Honorable Ibrahim Semujunganda. Dr. Kizza Besigye is your leader, was your leader in FDC, is your leader in PFF. How did he end up in Kenya? How did he get, what was happening? What do we know that we don't know yet?
What I know is that Dr. Besigye was invited by the leader of NAC Honorable Martha Karua.
Where is NAC?
NACA is a National Rainbow Coalition. It's a political party in Kenya. To speak at the launch of her book, I visited Dr. Besigye today in a Ruzira maximum prison where he is held. And he told us, we went, three of us MPs, Honorable Mwijuchi and Honorable Harold Muhindo and other family members. And he said he went for a meeting which was supposed to be a very short meeting on his way for a dinner. And it is at that meeting that they were removed at that apartment at Riverside and then bundled into a vehicle with Kenyan registered number plate, driven up to Maraba, and then from Maraba they changed vehicles and drove them to Makindye military barracks, where they were held until the news of his disappearance in Kenya started circulating. And dramatically, that's when they now told them a few minutes that we are taking you to court, only to end up before a military tribunal. I think, I don't know, the lawyer can advise, but the declaration of court in the Kabazuguruka case is that this is a disciplinary tribunal. I think you're even elevating it to call it a court. Already the Constitutional Code says this is like a disciplinary committee for military people. They went to challenge that judgment in the Supreme Court, and unfortunately, Winnie Dolo, the Chief Justice, is sitting on it. He doesn't want, I think they don't want to make a judgment, because if they do, it means trying civilian will end, so they will keep it there.
You're speculating about that. The Supreme Court hasn't scheduled it for discussion, for resolution maybe.
More than 3 years.
Wow.
For me, yes, the question he asked, Dr. Besigye was in Kenya. He's been in Kenya many times. But this particular visit, he had gone to attend a book launch. In fact, he was scheduled to be with us on Monday as we were welcoming colleagues, the 36 who had been earlier kidnapped from Kisumu, and we had a symposium to speak about rule of law. So he was supposed to have been part of that meeting. And that's where the first news of his disappearance came in. But I didn't know that he would be abducted in the fashion and manner. So we dismissed the news that no, it's not possible.
From what you know so far, was that a private meeting? Was it related to his business as an activist and as a political actor in Uganda?
No, he went to Kenya primarily, what I know, as I said, for the book launch. The rest of what he did are not things that we knew and we are disclosed, because you will meet people, relatives, friends. So that meeting was not related to maybe to the book launch, because ordinarily you will meet many other people. I have gone to Kenya, met Ugandans, met opposition MPs, met, so you will never know how many people you will meet and for which reasons.
Dr. Chris Bayomonse, the Daily Monitor quotes you are saying you can be arrested from anywhere because countries have treaties or instruments they sign between them that allow extradition. If you committed a crime and they find you in country X, you can be arrested and brought back to the country. Was Dr. Besigye brought in Uganda under extradition? What do you know so far?
Yes,
Was extradited?
I want to believe that the state of Uganda and the state of Kenya were in the talking terms, because it would be difficult, for instance, to enter into Kenya, arrest somebody without the knowledge and approval of the establishment in Kenya. I haven't talked to those who arrested him to get the details, but I want to believe that there was understanding between the two countries, and that's why I made that statement.
Could you see the question?
Yes,
Maybe he didn't.
I had it. I had it. I'm saying that there must have been understanding between the two governments for the arrest to be effected. And indeed, I stand by what the monitor is quoting. I did say that it is possible to arrest an individual even when he or she is in an outside country. Yes.
The language being used so far, Doctor, is that Besigye was abducted in another country and brought back without following the procedure.
Well, abduction is the language that some people have started to use. Even when people are arrested in Uganda, they say they have been abducted. Even when police or other security agents present themselves and arrest somebody, it's a terminology which has been of late been used, but I think wrongly. And in this case, he was arrested and brought to Uganda and has been arraigned before the court-martial. So the question of abduction does not arise.
You see, I sympathize with Chris.
No, don't sympathize with me because
your own boss, Mr. Yoweri Museveni, was on TV, and he outlined the procedures of arresting, even within Uganda. He said, actually, you introduce yourself. He said you inform. That's what is legally provided for. You inform the next of kin. You also disclose the reason why you are arresting. And he said those who are doing it, because the reason he was speaking about is because it was happening. He said that what they are doing is wrong. So that's why I said I sympathize with you, because even the person that you seek to speak for,
you don't have to sympathize with me.
Recognize that actually there is a procedure of arresting a person. You don't just come in a van, bump a person, and then you run away like a mad person.
Yeah, but if your person is arrested irregularly, you can challenge that manner of arrest in the courts of law, for instance.
We'll get to the details as we move along. Dr. Miriam Matembe, you're a lawyer. You're also a senior citizen. I'm asking you a very political question. The arrest of Dr. Kizza Besigye has thrust him back into the news. And, thrust him back into the news. What does this mean for you from where you sit, that the discussion of political activity in this country is drifting back into this kind of issue?
But I tell you, I think you are asking me a wrong question, because when has Besigye left the news? Besigye as a political person, has he ever been out of the news? So you are saying the arrest is bringing him back. He's always been there. So if you ask me that the arrest has brought him back, I'm not in a position to answer that, because I don't know whether this will, how it will affect the whatever politics you are talking about. But I think what we should be discussing is this right? What is this government of Uganda? I can see the the minister who is talking as if his government does not have any law that govern what happens. So he says, if you are arrested wrongly, you can go and plead. Now, when he went to plead, then they closed him. Even when he was wrongly arrested, I don't understand the whole thing. But for me, what I would like us to discuss really is the whole issue of arresting Besigye and the way they arrested him, as if there is. I was wondering, was Besigye running away? When Besigye goes to Kenya and he has committed an offense, wasn't he returning? Did they have to go to Kenya and abduct Besigye? For me, those are some of the things that are disturbing me that we should be able to discuss. I know legalities, my brother or my son here will discuss those details of the law. But for me, I say, as ordinary people, if Besigye lives in Uganda here, he went to exile once when he went to South Africa before the formation, I think, Was it after FDC or before?
Before the formation of FDC.
After the reform agenda, when they suffered and they ran away. Ever since he came back, this man has been tortured. In fact, it is by the grace of God that Besigye is alive. He must be a unique body. His body must be very unique because the way he has suffered arrest, and ever since the arrest, they torture him. There has never been any sensible case that has ever been concluded against Besigye. Not even Besigye only, but all these opposition leaders whom they arrest, whom they torture, whom they do what, this is government. Very hopeless, because you arrest people, you waste all the money and so on, and then in the end, the case is withdrawn, it does not end anywhere. The objective for arresting is something else, is not the fact that this man committed a crime. Because if he had committed a crime in Uganda, and he was running away, and they come to learn that he's running away, then maybe you can go and maneuver abduction. But otherwise, legally, you don't even abduct, because he's saying that the agreements, they are there. There is a way of managing the legal agreements and the legal arrest extradition, which we are talking about, which is or deportation. Was he deported? And you are deported when you do a certain wrong thing there in the country where you are. They deport you back. Or you are extradited because you have done something, you are running away, and so they want to catch you. And so they go with the government. There are procedures. Nicholas will explain all these procedures, which they must follow when they are securing him back here. But the way they went to do this, I want to say, but your government has gone beyond and beyond. And you people who are in that government, there is a time when you will sit and say, no, here we are doing wrong. If I were you, I wouldn't defend this nonsense, because the whole thing is nonsense. Why do you run to catch Besigye there, torture him, put him in a military tribunal, when in fact you could have waited here and get him if he did a wrong and take him to court? Why do they do this kind of thing?
Nicholas, let me come to you. I want to draw some examples, and my example will be a little bit longer. The basic question is, what is the difference between this manner of arrest of Dr. Kizza Besigye and other Ugandans that the state had interest in that have been arrested? I'll give you 3 examples. One is the recent, the FDC 36, the young people who were arrested in Nakuru, in Kisumu, and brought back to Uganda, that Honorable Semuju says they were supposed to have an event on Monday to discuss those who were since... It was a symposium.
But also welcoming the 36 from prison after 104 days.
Yes, those have been granted bail.
Yeah.
The second example I want to use is when Uganda was interested in a man called Jamil Mukulu, believed to be the leader of the Allied Democratic Front. The government of Uganda learned that Jamil Mukulu had been arrested in Tanzania of a different offense. They indicated they were interested in him, sent security, and Jamil Mukulu was brought under the jurisdiction of Uganda. The third example is a man called...
Jamil Mukulu, there was actually a legal process.
Yes, I want Nicholas to speak to that and explain the difference. The third example I want to refer to is a man called Pato. If you remember Pato, who was a suspect in the murder, the abduction and murder of Susan Magara, who was in South Africa. When you look at those 3 examples, what is the difference between the Besigye arrest? To be fair, Besigye was not arrested alone. He was arrested with Obed Kamlige.
Yeah.
Yes. What is the difference from a legal perspective?
So, Charles, the events that happened to Dr. Kizza Besigye is not the first such events. Kenya has become a hub for repatriation, abduction, by whatever name you want to call it, of foreign nationals in that country. in the recent 2 months, there were reported cases of Turkish nationals, British nationals, who were abducted in similar manners, and they only showed up in Turkey before a court of law in Turkey. Secondly, there have been many Ugandans who have gone through similar process. I don't know if you recall the case of Rasta Lokuya in 2010. Bundled up, put in the boot of a car, driven to Kampala, turned up at CMI headquarters. No charges, detained for many months, beaten, and then let go. The case of Hassan Agade, together with Yahya Sulaiman, Idris Magandu, these ones were arrested in Kenya, handed over to the Ugandan security operatives. The distinctions are two. There are processes that are required to be undertaken to extradite a national in a foreign country who is suspected of having committed an offense. The state from which those nationals come initiate a request for extradition, indicating the grounds for which they are seeking the extradition. The receiving state would commence legal processes according the persons the subject of that request the opportunity to challenge their extradition. It could be on grounds that their return to the requesting country might lead to severe violation for human rights. So there is procedural justice required before an individual is extradited from a receiving country to a requesting country. The second thing is this, that you have the obligations under international law, in this case by Kenya, to ensure that a person on their territory is not returned against their will or against the fear of further violations of their rights. The principle is called the principle of non-refoulement. So the first distinction is that in the case of Jamil Mukulu and Pato in South Africa, there were extensive legal processes to challenge their extradition to Uganda. Those countries had extradition treaties with Uganda. In other words, if Uganda has no treaty with that country, you cannot extradite a person to Uganda. Take the case of Rwanda. We challenged several attempts to deport Rwandan nationals to Rwanda because Uganda and Rwanda do not have an extradition treaty outlining the observance of fundamental rights and freedoms of the person, the subject of the request. Now, the second distinction is that you have cases in which clandestine operations are conducted in a second country, across a border. There's no resort to legal processes. The person is simply abducted without following due process and handed over to the next country. In the case of Dr. Kizza Besigye, that appears to have been the case. That Dr. Kizza Besigye may have been trailed into Kenya with the support of and cooperation of the Kenyan authorities. He was illegally, unlawfully, and justifiably abducted and sent back to Uganda against his will. I say that the Kenyan government may have cooperated because if they had not, they would be protesting an affront of their territory by Ugandan security agencies. They're not even concerned about it. I think that the Kenyan government was complicit, participated, tracked, and abducted Kizza Besigye to send him back to Uganda in violations of all known rules of extradition and non-refoulement. Thirdly, Uganda is a member of this African community. The only surviving head of state, who is the original signatory for the re-establishment of this African community, is President Museveni. There are principles in the East African Community Charter that refer to observance of the rule of law, that refer to the African Charter and a commitment. There are principles that guide the institution. These principles have been litigated at the East African Court of Justice. Member states have an obligation. In this case, we have violated the East African Treaty in ways that are unimaginable, in the most obscene and foul manner, in the case of Dr. Kizza Besigye and many other people who were arrested from Kenya.
What you're saying to us, the Daily Nation in Kenya is talking about the abductions or arrests that have happened by different countries. Indian polls expert Muhammad Zaidi Sami and Zulfakar Ahmed Khan, as well as their driver Nicodemus Mwania Mwanji, were arrested in Kenya. Pakistani journalist Ashad Sharif, he actually ended up dying. Is one of those who were picked up from Kenya. You have Ethiopian businessman Samson Telemaiko. Yes, I think Telemaiko. You have Turkish nationals Alpasian Tasi Mustafa, Hussein, and Odzuk. And then you have Maurice Mabior, a vocal critic of South Sudan's government, and Rwandan human rights defender Yusuf Ahmed Gassana. When you look at the variety of these countries, Turkey, South Sudan, Rwanda, Ethiopia, Pakistan, and India, looks like these kinds of arrests are not unique to Uganda. These kinds of actions are not unique to Uganda, that they happen.
Kenya for a long time has been a safe haven for those fleeing persecution from their countries. That is why you have all manners of nationalities ending up in Kenya. There's so many Ugandans who are in Kenya. There's so many other nationalities in Kenya. It is because Kenya is also host to a large UN agency responsible for taking refugees to third-party countries. And so it is no surprise that all sorts of people end up in Kenya. But what is common about all this is the complicity of the government of Kenya. Because Kenya used to be a place people admired as a robust a robust democratic country that observes the rule of law. But what you're beginning to see over the last couple of years is that the Kenyan regime has taken a turn for the worse. You have Kenyan political party, the UDA, expressing admiration of a political system in Uganda that is viewed by many as autocratic, repressive, and they want to come and see how they've held power for 40 years. So what is really common is that Kenya has lent itself to become the capital for all manners of criminalities, not just against foreign nationals. There are cases of lawyers doing cases that show up date on on banks of rivers, bank officials doing official work with the bank, showing up date somewhere in Kisumu. These cases must concern everybody. And I think that Dr. Kizza Besigye's case is perhaps most prominent because of who he is and because of just how the state here in Uganda has treated him. But also because of just how, lackluster the charges are. If a serious prosecutor wouldn't draft that charge sheet, because it is really, in law what we call duplicitous. It offends it appears the intention is not to prosecute or get a conviction, but rather the arrest and the process is the punishment itself.
Dr. Chris Byanyima, I want to come back to you quickly on this. One of the viewers watching us has asked me to put this question to you. How do you describe what happened to Dr. Kizza Besigye? Was it an arrest? Was it a deportation or extradition?
Okay. Thank you very much. Before I answer that one, I want to disagree with this lawyer Opio on the issue of sub judice. Yes, lawyers, you give opinions, even us who are not lawyers. I would want to think that we are constrained from giving a lot of information to discuss this matter. For instance, if I had, say, information that pins Dr. Besigye, I don't think it would be proper for me to start reading it on television when the matter is being tried in court. But I tried to Google the word sub judice, just in simple English, and it says, under judicial consideration and therefore prohibited from public discussion elsewhere. So I think to an extent we are constrained from going into deep discussion over these issues. But like I have said earlier on, Dr. Kizza Besigye was arrested if that gentleman wants an answer. And the government of Uganda was in touch with the government of Kenya. Otherwise, how would you arrest somebody in the middle of Nairobi and then bring him back to Uganda, say through the airport, or even if it was by land, without the full knowledge and support of the state there in Kenya? And maybe the other questions we would pose is that, first of all, why he was arrested in Kenya, why they didn't wait for him. It depends on the intelligence information the security officials have. Maybe many of us do not consume the intelligence the people who arrested him had. Because I know Dr. Kizza Besigye, like many of us, have been traveling. I have traveled on a plane with Kizza Besigye going to Nairobi. Like on the day when there were demonstrations in Nairobi, I traveled with Dr. Kizza Besigye. And we went to Nairobi and went to our different destinations, but he was not arrested. So there must be a reason as to why this time around security arrested him, and that's the comment I was making.
Dr. as a Minister of Government, isn't that the major question Ugandans are asking you? They're saying there must be information. We do not have the benefit of consuming what intelligence has. And the question that Dr. Matembe raised and said, Dr. Besigye has a reputation of having been arrested multiple times, maybe more than 50 times in the last 20 years?
More than 200.
Yes, and they're saying you, government of Uganda, has never successfully prosecuted him. What is different from those previous arrests? And what's the confidence you're sharing with Ugandans that this time round...
The rule is no more that you are arrested on the basis of suspicion. If police or security agencies suspect that you have committed a crime or you're about to commit a crime, then they can arrest you. And then it depends on the evidence they adduce in the courts of law. If the evidence is weak, you may be acquitted. If it is strong, you may be successfully prosecuted. So it depends. Doesn't mean that whoever is arrested will eventually lose that
when
case. When
we are discussing a particular individual who has been arrested multiple times and never successfully prosecuted, doesn't that raise...
If I may ask the Minister,
yes.
The Honourable Minister is a servant of the people. He's a Minister for Information and National Guidance.
Yes.
I think sometimes it's okay to say, I don't know. Because hearing him speak, Charles...
You want him to be sacked?
No. To say, I am going to get further information and get back to you.
No, which information?
Because what he's saying is this guessing may have been, I think so.
I am saying...
He's not stating a fact.
I have documentation here which shows...
No.
For instance, I have documentation here which shows there have been attempts of subversion. But I'm saying I am constrained by that sub judice rule to read some of this information to the public. So it depends on what the security and intelligence services have. Why do you think he was arrested this time around, not the previous visit he has had to Kenya? Or because Kizza Besigye has been arrested, but most of the time has been free. Why did they arrest him, not any other? So I think we should wait.
So you tell us, because you're the Minister for Information, you owe a public duty.
Yes.
Could you allow the
Minister? The Minister is holding a
Yes.
FDC press statement. I can see from his phone. It's not a secret document. If he has information, tell the public.
No.
That's why they bring you to the show.
I am saying your interpretation of the law is not correct. The matter is before court.
Don't hide under some judice.
I know for me,
Don't hide.
can I come in for just for
Can I-
Could you allow the Minister opportunity to speak? You will have your own opportunity. Honourable Minister, the sub judice rule applies to the merits of the case.
That's what I wanted
Yes.
to
Yes,
talk.
it
That's
stops
what
at the
I'm
merits
saying.
of the case.
If
But
I
as a matter of public, as a matter in the public domain, courts cannot prohibit its discussion. The sub judice rule
No, but
does not prohibit its
as a
discussion.
government spokesperson,
Yes.
if, for instance, I have information from intelligence upon which they have based to arrest him, it would be improper for me to start diverging it on TV when actually that evidence will be used in the courts of law. I don't have to be a lawyer to know that. I don't have to be. So,
Chris,
yes.
where did the arrest take place by who?
At least
Those details
And for
will be
which
given in
charge?
court. What is important?
information have you put
No. What is important is that one, he was arrested
By who? From
in
where?
Kenya by security agencies working with the government of Kenya. He was brought back.
so-
At least he was not tortured. He appeared in the military court martial and has been remanded. Those are facts. The details as to why security swung into action this time around, not to wait for him to return, will be given in the courts of law, because this is not court for me. I am not the prosecuting agent to start giving details of what intelligence has about him. Because why do you think it is him and his colleague who were arrested, not other Ugandans who were in Nairobi, or not you and I? Are you saying because Kizza Besigye is a high-profile politician, if there is suspicion that he has committed a crime, he is immune from arrest? That's what you are saying? If security agencies believe that he has committed a crime or is about to commit a crime, the law allows security to arrest. What is important is that that evidence should be brought. If it is weak, then we shall criticize the security agencies, and even as the government, we can take action. But for you to argue that because he's a high-profile politician, therefore, if there is information about what he has committed, it should not be touched.
You see, the state and people holding power are also subject to the law. Dr. Kizza Besigye is abducted. You need to read all the newspapers in Kenya, including television stations. In fact, their concern in Kenya is that this abduction took place on the backdrop of many other abductions. All the newspapers in Kenya, all the television is in Kenya. The spokesperson of Minister of Foreign Affairs was asked and said, for us, we do nothing. We had the case here of Rwanda coming here to take refugees, and you know where it ended, including Ugandan officials being sanctioned and others being sacked, because we are allowing a foreign country to come here and whisk away people. I said at the beginning, and Chris said doesn't need my sympathy, that you even have the courage to come on TV and begin justifying illegalities. You're going to be a victim one day, Chris, like you have been a victim before. You don't want me to go back to that case, and you know what you went
You
through.
can go back to it. If you wish.
Transformed him to be who he is.
No.
Don't you remember?
Don't
Because
try
you
to
see,
intimidate him. You can talk about the case.
Dr. Besigye is abducted. They bring him up to Maraba. He does not go through any immigration process, not on the Kenyan side, not on the Ugandan side, and is driven and charged with the Obed Kamregea in the military court. Nobody says Besigye should not be arrested. He has been arrested 100 times. But to go and abduct him from a foreign country, you come here and keep quiet until people begin complaining, where is Besigye, where is Besigye? The spokesperson of the military says, go to the court martial. No, you first wait. You come to Mbuya, we have a press briefing. Even them, if you look at the faces of people who were the group of the military who were in court, maybe them, they need our sympathy. You don't need it.
I don't need it.
That you make people to do wrong things, knowing that what you are doing is very wrong. They suspend proceedings numerous times, even to try to put together.
Honorable Semoju,
yes.
The questions that the Kenyan government needs to answer about how a person, a guest of their country, was picked by another, a foreign country, which in this case would be Uganda. There are questions that we need to ask the government of Uganda. From where you sit, Dr. Besigye has been produced in court so far.
Not in court.
He's been produced in court.
No, he has been produced before a military disciplinary committee, according to the constitutional court.
Is that court?
That's what they say.
That's a military tribunal.
It's a military
It's
tribunal.
the reason why the people who sit there are not even lawyers. They're ordinary military men without legal instruction.
It's the Army Courts Martial, isn't it?
It is called in the law the General Court
Constitutional Court has made a declaration that this is a disciplinary committee for people who are in the military.
He has been produced through some formal process. So at least knowledge of where he is, what he's being charged
And
with,
the military court martial is
has
created
been
by
explained
law.
so far. What questions are you putting? What are you asking? I mean, there are questions that should be asked of the government of Kenya, and questions that should be asked of the government of Uganda. Where does your
The
concern
government
lie?
of Kenya has been appropriately asked by Kenyans through all their media outlets today, if you followed. But I think, in my view, the President William Ruto has rendered himself vulnerable The advantage in Kenya that the state institutions are not personally owned in Kenya. You cannot make them intervene on your behalf at your whim. There are processes, the courts may overrule you. But in Uganda, state institutions are owned by a family and by one person. So Ruto, when he became vulnerable, I think now it is obvious, so he came to the neighborhood where state institutions are personally owned and said, can you lend me your intelligence? Can you lend me your military? And he must pay back by allowing Museveni to begin hovering and walk into Kenya and out the way he likes. These fellows who brought Dr. Kizza Besigye, I have been in Luzira today, I spoke to him and spoke to Obed. The fellows who brought them from Kenya at Maraba, they only changed vehicles. It is not that Kenya was handing over to Uganda. They parked for 30 minutes around Maraba, drove through immigration centers on both sides, and then changed vehicles, and then the one of Kenya went back. But Obed told me, initially they were speaking Swahili. They thought that actually maybe these are Kenyans. Only if one of them along the way receiving a question, said, Kandi. Then he said, we asked them that you guys, you mean all along you were Ugandans? Then along the way they became Ugandans in the conversations. So what we are experiencing now is that you have a regime in Kenya of Ruto that somehow lost the legitimacy. People started protesting against it. It became vulnerable. It could not mobilize the Kenyan state institutions to come to its rescue. So it came to Uganda where institutions are owned. If you speak to the father, he can help. If you speak to the son, he can help. Or a brother, because here we are all captives. Dr. Besigye told me today in Luzira, said you are sympathizing with me because my prison is small, but the rest of Uganda is a prison. You are outside, you're also in a prison. So that's the difference, that Kenya, with all their shortcomings, they still have state institutions. That's why ministers, they are not speaking like Chris Bariomons. If you have failed. In Kenya, the authority is saying, we don't know. So you cannot ask them to account for something.
Do you believe them? Do you believe that
there is connivance between Ruto and Museveni, without doubt. So the small percentage that is helping Ruto to hold on to power.
So it is President Ruto who went to arrest Besigye.
You had your time to explain, and for you said you don't know. You think you. So me who knows, let me tell you.
Okay, you know.
So the vulnerability of the Ruto administration is what has brought us where we are. But also I think Mr. Museveni now realizes, because you see, you need to follow. I was doing some research this morning and went back to 2022 when Ruto becomes president in Kenya. First, Museveni's son here tweets in disappointment that why didn't Uhuru Kenyatta continue for a third term? Maybe he didn't know that his father already had deals with Ruto. But the most important thing, which is instructional, Muhoozi Kainerugaba said, in Kenya, constitution, rule of law. For us, it is the revolution. You need to go back to that. In Kenya, constitution, rule of law. For us, it is revolution. And eventually, you've seen the revolution. No following the law. The minister says they have arrangement. They have arrangement. You cannot go to Kenya without Kenya knowing. Even Rwanda came here, took people. Uganda knew, but it was wrong. So it doesn't make it right because authorities in Kenya knew that you were coming to abduct Besigye because they knew and helped you. Now it is illegal.
Honorable Semuju, we'll have to cut it here. Honorable Matembe, just hold your thought so that I can give you an adequate time. Deo Tumwine in the Buhweju district, the Buhweju district chairman, you're saying that Afro Mobile is off and you're missing the great program. How else can we view NBS? Mr. Tumwine, uninstall the old Afro Mobile app on your phone and download the new Afro Mobile app and you'll be able to watch. And for those who watch off the Afro Mobile app, for this month, you'll be watching actually for free without having to pay for the app. So uninstall the old one, download the new one under the new logo that you saw at the news as the news was ending, and you'll be able to follow us. Misai Tembo Kaugu says Besigye was not headed for a journey of no return. What is clear is that he has been going and coming. Has the government dumped its airport arrests and substituted it with abductions on foreign soil? This arrest shows how the government is fearing shadows. Besigye needs his freedom. That's Misai Tembo Kaugu. Kato Nyansio says, to my own understanding, Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye went to Kenya not as a refugee, that Kenya denied him protection, so Kenyan government shouldn't be blamed. And secondly, it's always better to arrest a suspect with exhibits. I think the Ugandan authorities, I suspect, could have wanted to get him in action. A story would be different if he would be left to complete his mission and come back. Secondly, I don't think Dr. Besigye is no longer a political threat to Museveni. He has himself kept proclaiming that he's planning to do away with the regime by other means other than the election. Bravo to the security agencies. Prevention is better than cure. Kato Nyansio. Let's take a break. We'll pick this conversation up in a moment.